Kevin Gausman standing on the visitors' dugout steps of American League ballparks with a full no-trade clause in his back pocket, and 1 week left before Monday's 6 p.m. deadline changes everything about how the Toronto Blue Jays construct their 40-man roster for the stretch run. And that's where we start today, not with sentiment, but with the ledger. Let's talk numbers first, because that's what's actually driving this decision inside Rogers Center's front office suite. Gausman is in year 5 of the 5-year, $110 million deal he signed in December 2021, carrying a Navy of $22 million against the 2026 competitive balance tax. At 50-59 and sitting 5.5 games back of the final AL wildcard spot with a soft path back into contention, every dollar Ross Atkins can shed off that CBT number matters, not just for optics, but for actual payroll flexibility heading into an offseason where Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s extension is already locked in at $500 million over 14 years, and where Bo Bichette's next contract, whether via extension or free agency, is going to command AL East money. If Toronto moves Gausman, even a straight salary dump return brings back a fraction of that $22 million CBT hit, since it's prorated for whatever's left on the books, roughly $7 to $8 million remaining depending on when the trade clears. That's meaningful breathing room for a front office that already has commitments to Jose Berrios through 2029, Chris Bassett's option decision looming, and arbitration-eligible names like Alek Manoah and Yariel Rodriguez needing raises this winter. Every scout in the league knows Gausman still profiles as a legitimate mid-rotation arm, a 3.85 FIP, above-average splitter usage, and StatCast data showing his split change is still generating whiffs in the 33rd percentile of spin efficiency for his career. That's not a rental you get for nothing. Now here's where the insider lens matters. Teams like the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Houston Astros, and yes, the New York Mets have all been connected to starting pitching depth ahead of the deadline, and Gausman's World Series pedigree from this past fall makes him a premium rental target, not a salary dump. Sources around the league suggest Atkins isn't just fielding offers for prospects. He's specifically targeting upper-level, close-to MLB-ready pieces. Think a fringe top, 100 arm, or controllable MLB-ready bat that slots directly into the 2027 depth chart. That's a very different return than what Toronto got in previous fire sales, and reflects how much value evaluators still place on a two-time All-Star with track record in October. Let's shift to what this means for the pitching staff itself, because losing Gausman doesn't just remove innings, it changes the entire hierarchy of the rotation. Berrios slides into the unquestioned number 1 role, something he's earned with sub 3.60 ERA across his last 15 starts. Bassett becomes a wily veteran anchor for the back half, and that opens a spot that likely gets filled by some combination of Bowden Francis and a AAA Buffalo call-up. This is where player development starts to matter as much as trade compensation. Paxton Schultz and right-hander T.J. Brock have both been stretched out in Buffalo specifically in case a fire sale forces an internal fifth starter solution. If Gausman goes, expect Schultz to get the first look, with his low 90 sinker and above-average ground ball rate, making him a passable stopgap, while Schneider manages workload carefully across the bullpen. Speaking of Schneider, this is a manager who has never hidden his affection for Gausman as a leader. But John Schneider's job over the next 10 days isn't to grieve a departure. It's to manage a clubhouse that knows exactly what's happening in real time. Multiple players in that room, including Springer and Varsho, are having the same expiring contract conversations as Gausman. Schneider has to keep a group that clawed his way to a pennant just months ago from unraveling emotionally while the front office actively dismantles pieces of it. That's an incredibly difficult balancing act, and it's a major storyline heading into this weekend series against the Cardinals. Now, on to lineup and roster construction, because a sell-off at the deadline doesn't just impact pitching. It reshapes the entire competitive balance of this roster for August and September. If Springer and Varsho also move, Toronto's outfield alignment gets a serious youth infusion. Alan Roden, who has posted a strong .360 WOBA in Buffalo this season, becomes the everyday left fielder almost overnight. Addison Barger continues to see time both at third and in the outfield, giving Schneider positional flexibility, while Bichette holds down shortstop as the one true untouchable trade chip remaining on a roster. assuming ownership doesn't get equally aggressive shopping him too, which, to be clear, no credible source is indicating right now. This is also where prospect stock becomes critical to track. If Atkins lands a package for Gausman built around pitching depth, names like right-hander Trey Yesovich, currently up in Buffalo with a fastball touching 97, and a wipeout slider generating a 32% whiff rate in Double-A this season, become part of the 2027 rotation conversation almost immediately. On the position player side, keep an eye on whether any deal brings back a corner infield bat with more MLB polish than what's currently in the pipeline, since Barger and Ernie Clement have solidified the right side of the infield, but the org lacks a true middle-of-the-order power bat below the majors. Let's also touch on exit velocity in the eye test, because Gausman's actual on-field performance this year supports both the sell and buy low arguments simultaneously. His average exit velocity allowed sits at a respectable 87.9 miles per hour, but his strikeout rate has dipped from north of 30% during his peak years to closer to 24% in 2026, a red flag at any. Querying team's analytics department is absolutely going to flag in medical and performance reviews before finalizing anything. Still, in October moments, stuff and swagger matter more than regular season rate stats. And that's exactly the kind of postseason equity that makes contenders willing to overpay in prospect capital right now. From a depth chart and long-term roster building perspective, this isn't just about clearing salary. It's about identifying which core pieces Atkins believes can form a next contending window in Toronto, separate from names on expiring deals. Guerrero is locked up. Berrios is locked up. Bichette's future is a swing variable that determines whether 2027 is a rebuild year or a retooling year. Everything happening with Gausman, Springer, Bieber, and Varsho over these next 96 hours is effectively step one of answering that larger organizational question. As for Gausman himself, if Saturday's start against St. Louis truly is his last in Toronto blue, expect an emotional atmosphere at Rogers Center that transcends the standings. This is a player who bet on this franchise in free agency back in December 2021, when Toronto was a finished product, who helped build a culture that carried this team to a World Series appearance, and who has spoken openly and honestly about how much the city and this clubhouse have meant to him and his family over these 5 years. Whatever uniform he's wearing come August, that legacy in Toronto is already secured. We'll be tracking every single update out of Rogers Center in Buffalo as we approach Monday's deadline, breaking down exactly what package comes back if and when this trade is finalized, and what it means for the Blue Jays' 2027 CBT positioning and rotation depth. If you want that analysis the second it drops, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and you got notifications turned on, because this front office is about to move fast. Drop your prediction for the Gausman return package in the comments. Hit that like button if you think Toronto retools rather than rebuilds, and we'll see you in the next one.